Navigating the Portugal D8 residency visa, our document, processes, and timelines in 2024. Hello there, you're welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Mui Douglas, and on this space I share mostly informative content about my experiences as an African expat living in the EU. So if this interests you, please do not hesitate to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up so more people can find this information that I share. I recently moved from Malta to Portugal with my family via the Portugal D8 residency visa, and in this video I'll be sharing details about the entire move process. To be eligible for the Portugal D8 residency visa, you should be able to prove financial stability. In this case, you should be able to prove that you earn at least 4 times the minimum wage in Portugal as the main applicant. For instance, the current minimum wage in Portugal is around 820 euros. So in this case, you need to be making at least 4 times 820 euros on a monthly basis, which totals to around 3,200 euros plus or thereabouts. Furthermore, if you intend to move with dependents, like your spouse or your child, like we did, you would need an additional 50% of the minimum wage for your spouse and 30% of the minimum wage for each dependent child. Also, you would need to show proof of sufficient funds for the entire family, which is 1 year of the minimum, in our case, was 1 year of the minimum wage for the main applicant, 50% of the entire amount for the spouse, and 30% for the dependent child. So using the example I shared earlier with the minimum wage of 820 euros, 1 year of that would be approximately 10k euros, and 50% of that 5,000, 30% would be 3,000 euros. So roughly you would need an estimated 18,000 euros as proof of funds for a family of 3 with the current minimum wage. So once you've done the math and your monthly income and savings meet the financial requirements, the next step is to gather all required or necessary documents for the visa application. Now, the required documents for the Portugal D8 might vary depending on your country of origin or residence. For us, we are Nigerians who have been living in Malta, or who had been living in Malta for almost 2 years. So I will be listing some of the documents or all of the documents that we had to present to support our application for this visa. So the list of documents we had to put together included: 1, bank statements proving both financial eligibility and sufficient proof of funds. So your bank statement must show your earnings for the last 3 to 6 months, highlighting your salary, and your bank balance should be enough to prove the minimum proof of funds. Number 2, police conduct certificate for all the countries you've resided up to a year for all adults. That's for everyone 18 and above. In our case, we needed clearance certificates from our home country, Nigeria, and our resident country at the time, Malta. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. The documents in Nigeria had to be authenticated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Nigeria and then legalized in the Portugal Embassy in Nigeria. On the other hand, the conduct certificate we got from Malta had to be notarized in Malta. The next set of documents were our marriage certificate and our daughter's birth certificate. Both of them had to be sent back to Nigeria to be authenticated in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also legalized by the Portuguese Embassy in Nigeria. The next set of documents were my husband's employment contract, his pay slips, and a declaration from his employer stating, a signed declaration from his employer stating that he could perform all of his roles, all of his duties 100% remotely. So while we were getting all of these documents sorted and getting them legalized, authenticated, notarized, and everything that was required, we also needed some documentation from Portugal as well. And for that, we employed the services of a legal representative. So in addition to all of the documents which I've mentioned earlier, we also needed a Portuguese NIF, which is the Portuguese Fiscal Identification Number. We also needed a Portuguese bank account and a housing contract in Portugal. So we're able to get our NIFs in time and rented an apartment in Portugal, but our bank account was taking longer than necessary due to some compliance checks by the banks, and that was because of our Nigerian passport. So at this point, our lawyer emailed the embassy in Rome and we were allowed to proceed with the application with our Maltese bank account. So a quick rundown of all of the documents we had to gather. I'm going to be reading them from my phone so I don't miss any. We had bank statements, Nigerian police conduct, authenticated and legalized. Malta police conduct, notarized. The marriage certificate and birth certificate, authenticated and legalized. Also, the employment contract, 3 months pay slips, signed letter from the employer, Portugal NIF for all applicants, housing contract for a rental in Portugal, tax clearance documents, scanned copies of our Malta residence cards, very important, and scanned copies of all the pages of our international passports, including the blanks. I'm going to leave the list in the description as well, so you can go through them and see what is required. So now we have all of our documents ready, and this took a couple of months, to be honest. Between waiting for the Portuguese bank account to be completed and trying to get an appointment in the Portuguese embassy in Nigeria to legalize our documents, and how we lost our first appointment because somehow, even though we had the confirmation email, our name wasn't captured at the security point, so they didn't let our representative go in for the appointment, and a whole lot that went on throughout this process. So for us, this entire process started around December of 2023. And by June 2024, first week of June 2024, we were ready to submit our application. So since we were in Malta at the time, the closest Portuguese embassy to us was in Rome. And so that's where we had to submit our application. So at this point, our legal representative, who also had power of attorney for this entire process, had to email all of our documents, including signed application form, which we had to physically sign and mail back to her in Portugal, to the embassy, to the consulate in Rome, while we waited for a visa appointment date. After almost 2 months, we finally got an email to attend our appointment, which was scheduled for the 29th of July, 2024. The email came like a week or a couple of days before the interview date, which means we had to book our flights to be in Rome to attend the interview in person. Also, we had our lawyer coming from Portugal as well for the interview, just in case. So after our lawyer and the consular rep had gone over all of our documentations and to ensure that everything was all right, the interview lasted probably 5 minutes with just about 2 questions. Number one, have you ever been to Portugal and why were you going? And that was it. So after the interview, we all went back home and the real wait began. So our visa interview was on the 29th of July, and by October 2nd, we finally got an approval email requesting our travel itinerary to Portugal so that our visas could be processed. We quickly submitted our travel itinerary and were given another appointment to go back to Rome and get our visas in person. At the time, we tried to explore the option of mailing our passports down to Rome, but it wasn't accepted. And the embassy insisted that all family members needed to be present back at the consulate to receive their visas in person. So we all took a trip back to Rome to go finish what we started. We got our visas and they all came with residency appointment dates in Aima, Portugal. So just to put it out there, the fact that we were already Schengen residents and could enter Portugal legally for up to 90 days, we still had to go through the process of applying for an entry visa to Portugal. The same applies to first world citizens that their passports already give them access to Portugal for up to 90 days. If you intend to stay longer in Portugal, you would need a residency visa, and this can only be applied for and approved outside of Portugal. So once you enter the country, you will then proceed to attend your IMA appointment at the set date with all necessary documentation, and your residence card would be mailed to your Portuguese address. As a final note, the process of immigrating to Portugal is a very slow one, irrespective of where you're from or how much you have. So if you are just starting out on the D8, D7, or any of the D visas, just know that it's going to take quite a lot of time. And you may even encounter some roadblocks along the way before you eventually settle in the country. So prepare your mind and plan accordingly too. This entire process took us almost a year, and I know quite a number of people that have similar timelines. So that's it, guys, our entire move process from Malta to Portugal on the Portugal D8 residency visa. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section and I will try to be as detailed as possible when responding to them. And until I come your way again in my next video, do have an amazing day. Bye-bye.